This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alex Masfer. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to the show. If you are a returning listener, we really do appreciate you here at the GSMC Sports Podcast. Before I start talking anything sports, I want to remind hopefully some of you new listeners to subscribe to the podcast on whatever application or website you are listening to this on, and on whatever device you're listening to this on, your phone, your watch, your laptop, your iPad, whatever it may be. Do not forget to subscribe to the podcast. You want to subscribe to the podcast so you get those alerts and notifications, and you know when we drop a new episode here at the GSMC Sports Podcast. Again, you want to subscribe to the podcast on whatever device you are listening to this on that same application or website, and you will get all those alerts and notifications, and you'll know when we drop a new episode here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, and you can be one of the first people to listen to a new episode when we release one. Again, do not forget to subscribe to the podcast, as well as leaving us a 5-star review or just a positive review in general. It would let us know and give us a big boost of confidence. Again, letting us know that you guys are enjoying the content that we are discussing here on the show, as well as, the topics, discussion points, just this whole flow of the show, how the episode went in general. Again, if you could leave us a 5-star review or just a positive review if you are enjoying the content of the show, we would really appreciate it. And again, it would give us that boost of confidence and let us know you guys are enjoying everything we are doing here at the GSMC Sports Podcast. And finally, we would love to interact with you guys more as a whole. So if you could follow us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, that would be incredible. Again, we'd love to interact with you guys more on there. So you want to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. On those social media platforms, we can really talk about anything. We can talk about sports. We can talk about the show. We can talk about whatever game's going on, live, anything like that. We can talk about all that good stuff over on social media. So do not forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's where you can primarily follow us on social media. Again, don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms, those platforms being Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I hope wherever you are and however you may be listening, you and your family are happy and healthy during these extremely trying times in the world today. We have a fantastic show for you all today. A little bit later on in the episode, at the very end of the episode, I'm going to be going through sort of like what I did last episode, going through a bunch of rumors in the NBA. The offseason is just around the corner. While it is technically the offseason, we got free agency and the draft coming up. A lot of rumors circulating around guys like Bradley Beal, teams like Golden State, Miami, Indiana. The New Orleans Pelicans also hired a new head coach in Stan Van Gundy. I'll get into all that good stuff, including why Kawhi might leave the LA Clippers in 2021. That's coming at the very end of the episode, the final segment, so you're going to want to stick around for all of those NBA rumors. Also later on in the show, right before that, I'm going to also give you my top 10 NFL teams going into, I believe, Week 7, which starts tonight when you're hearing this, as well as previewing that Thursday night game between Philadelphia and the New York Giants. But I'm also going to be giving you my top 10 NFL teams. As well as later on in the episode, we're going to continue my conversation about Tua Tagovailoa starting for the Miami Dolphins. He is the next rookie quarterback to be announced to be starting. I talked about it a lot last episode. This episode, I'll take a different approach to it. I'll explain to you why I'm doubling down on my point that this was the right time for Tua to start. There was a big debate on Twitter yesterday and really throughout the entire sports media world of was this the right time to play Tua. A lot of people are siding with Ryan Fitzpatrick after some quotes that he said after it was kind of announced that Tua was starting, saying he was heartbroken and that, he came off as he didn't understand why the move was being made now. So I'm going to be giving you my opinion on the Ryan Fitzpatrick quotes and why I think this is the right time for Tua Tagovailoa to start. That's all coming on later on in the episode, but what we're going to start with is some rumors circulating around one of the better receivers to ever play the game in the NFL, and that being Antonio Brown. Now, I'm sure you all know who Antonio Brown is. Antonio Brown, obviously the wide receiver who made his name undrafted out of, I want to say, Marshall, playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers for years and years, of course, and obviously went to the Raiders, who I believe were the Oakland Raiders. Yeah, they were the Oakland Raiders at the time in their final year. This was last year, of course. And afterwards, there was some sort of couple different scandals. One with, that was serious, that it's been taken to court and everything like that, which is, I believe, what he's been serving his suspension for, those sexual assault allegations, I think is what he served his suspension for. There was also the incident with getting frostbite on his feet, as well as the whole helmet issue. If you watched Hard Knocks with the Raiders, not this season, but last season, you know all about this. Then, of course, he was cut, eventually signed by the New England Patriots, who eventually cut him after 1 week after all those allegations came out. And he's been out of the league ever since. But there was a couple of interesting tweets, one of them saying pretty much that at some point Antonio Brown is going to come back. I believe it was Adam Schefter who first reported this, that he's going to be, after this week, this is week 7, I believe, right? So this is going to be week 7. He'll have served his 8-game suspension coming up pretty soon. In the next week or so, Antonio Brown will be able to play on a football field again, because we're going into week 7, and then I think there's a little bit after week 8 he will be eligible. So not this week or next week, but the week after, Antonio Brown can play football again. And Adam Schefter tweeted, with Antonio Brown's suspension eligible to end after week 8, the Seattle Seahawks are now positioned to make a push to sign him. Though they are not alone, many other teams are also interested. So Antonio Brown, according to Adam Schefter, he's pretty confident that he will be returning to the league this season. So it appears anytime between now and when his suspension officially ends, week 8, or after week 8, I should say, Antonio Brown will be picked up by an NFL team. Now, obviously, the early favorites to sign Antonio Brown are the Seattle Seahawks. They have been interested all the way since last offseason. They've pretty much been interested in signing him. There's been a lot of workout videos. If you remember, right before the season started, I talked about it a bunch, of Antonio Brown working out with Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, some other guys as well. And I told you that I think it would be a really good signing to have Antonio Brown if you're the Seattle Seahawks. Then the suspension officially came down, saying that he would miss the at least first half of the season. And everything's been quiet with Antonio Brown since. But now that he is poised to make a return to the NFL in the next 3 weeks or so, it appears he will be signing with an NFL team. I want to tell you why this is maybe one of the most important moves and decisions in the NFL, because there are a couple of teams that I believe are interested in Antonio Brown. Obviously, Adam Schefter said there are multiple teams, with Seattle being the front runner and the ones showing the most interest, as they've shown interest for pretty much the entire year so far in 2020. Ever since the Super Bowl ended with Kansas City, they've been interested in Antonio Brown, adding a guy like him. So it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. But with the teams that I expect to be interested in Antonio Brown, it could make or break some seasons of some really, really good NFL teams, and could elevate some teams to potential Super Bowl status or Super Bowl favorite levels, which is why I think this decision is more important than people are giving it credit for. It's being kind of swept under the rug with the Yannick Ngakoue trade after he was traded from Jacksonville to Minnesota. This year, he's already been traded again from Minnesota to Baltimore for a third-round pick. I'll get into that hopefully later on in this episode at some point. And obviously, the Dez Bryant acquisition of Baltimore as well. He's been signed to their practice squad. Hopefully, he can work his way up to the active roster. It was kind of all poured into this little news dump where those 3 stories all came out around the same time. Not a lot of people are talking about the Antonio Brown news. Obviously, it's not maybe as immediate as the Yannick Ngakoue trade or the Dez Bryant practice squad signing, as Antonio Brown can't really start playing for at least 3 more weeks. But any day now, Antonio Brown can be signed, and I expect him to be signed before week 8, so they can maybe, I'm not sure if he can practice with the team. I believe he can. He just can't play in the games. So he'll want to practice with the team for at least a week or 2 in the system. Wouldn't surprise me if Seattle's the team. I'll talk about all those teams in this segment, and that's what I want to dedicate this entire segment to, is the Antonio Brown sweepstakes. And I think they are bigger than the Le'Veon Bell sweepstakes, who everybody freaked out for days and days about. I talked about it at length, how I thought he was going to either go to, I thought he would go to to Kansas City, Miami, or Buffalo were three of the teams I had. Those were the final three teams. Obviously came down to Miami and Kansas City. Opted to go with Kansas City. That got a lot of attention and a lot of talk. I think this Antonio Brown signing is just as important as the Chiefs adding Le'Veon Bell, if not more important, because I think a team that Antonio Brown can get to can really change their season, change their entire wide receiving room. I want to start off with Antonio Brown's statistics for his career. Antonio Brown is 32 years old, so you can argue he is past his prime. I would argue since he's had a year off of football, his body's more, 31 instead of 32. And I think your athletic prime is between 27 and 33 in the NFL for a lot of positions. I won't count running back, and I won't really count maybe offensive linemen if you want to consider that as well. But specifically for quarterbacks, receivers, a lot of defensive players, a lot of corners, 27 to 33 is sort of the prime of your athletic life and the prime of your athletic career if you're an NFL athlete. So Antonio Brown is towards the end of that for sure. But anyway, he is 5'10", obviously, and his career stats, 841 receptions, over 11,000 yards, 75 touchdowns, and 131 games played underneath Antonio Brown's belt. That is a big-time move. There are not many receivers who have that sort of stat line, that sort of resume as a free agent. And I understand that Antonio Brown has been out of the league for a year due to circumstances with the allegations, with sort of everything, how everything ended with, the Raiders and the Patriots, and sort of everything was up in the air. And we didn't get a suspension, official suspension for a long time after the allegations came out. Obviously, the 8-game suspension. He'll be back in 3 weeks. But Antonio Brown is no slouch of a player. He keeps in shape. If you look at his Instagram, he's still in shape. I don't know, there's a difference between shape and, NFL football shape, but I trust Antonio Brown to be like that. And Antonio Brown, what he can really offer a team is a speed receiver at the minimum. Maybe Antonio Brown isn't that do-it-all receiver that he was with Pittsburgh, or maybe he was going to show spurts in with the Raiders, or showed in that one game for the New England Patriots last year. But what he can offer you at the bare minimum as a really good vertical deep threat. And if that's all you need and you're looking for as a wide receiver in the league, or if you're a coach in the league looking for a new wide receiver, Antonio Brown's going to be your guy. And the reason why I believe that is because of his vertical speed deep threat. All of these teams are moving towards a college-oriented system, that air raid offense. A lot of young quarterbacks in this league like to throw the ball deep. And while accuracy, I think, takes a little bit, more preference or more favorite to something like a strong-arm quarterback or something like that, still, the vertical deep threat, what Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill are doing, teams are trying to copy. And that's what the Raiders wanted to do by bringing in Antonio Brown almost over a year ago now, which was replicate the Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill experience with Derek Carr and Antonio Brown. Obviously didn't work out that way, but even still today, a lot of teams, including the Raiders after drafting Henry Ruggs, and whoever's going to draft Jalen Waddle and potentially Devontae Smith in this year's draft, are trying to replicate those speed receivers, and Antonio Brown has been that guy his entire career and has really been at that top tier level. At his best, Antonio Brown was a better version of Tyreek Hill, in my opinion, just because he could do even more than just those deep vertical threats, could run in the slot and things like that. So there's going to be a lot of teams interested. Obviously, Seattle is the favorite, and that's where I do actually expect him to go. But there are some wrenches that could be thrown in. There could be some teams that could offer something AB could need maybe a little bit more than just going to Seattle. I will talk about Seattle at the end and why I think if Seattle doesn't add Antonio Brown, they're right up there with co-Super Bowl favorites with the Kansas City Chiefs. I have them a little bit of a knock below right now. I have kind of Kansas City as their own tier right now, and just below are teams like, Tampa Bay, Seattle, some of these other teams. I'll get into that as well with my top 10 NFL teams later on in the show. But getting back to Antonio Brown, a couple of teams that I think should be interested. Number one, what came to mind immediately was the Green Bay Packers. They obviously just got humiliated by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I love Devontae Adams. I think he's a number one wide receiver in the league. Him and Aaron obviously have a fantastic partnership. But there needs to be more weapons on this Green Bay offense. The Aaron Rodgers train needs to keep on rolling, and it's sort of hit a road bump against Tampa Bay. He started off so well, started off 4-0. It looked like he was on the MVP track, and I think he threw 2 or 3 picks in that Tampa Bay game. I think he threw 3, actually, almost 4. I think he almost threw 4. He threw 3 at least, I believe. And everyone's kind of questioning Aaron Rodgers. Everyone's like, oh, this is why they drafted Aaron Love and all that good stuff. I'm not too worried about Aaron Rodgers if they add Antonio Brown or not, but adding Antonio Brown could sort of solidify the Packers as the best team in that division, with the Bears currently leading it at 5-1, Green Bay's 4-1, I believe, or 4-2, one of the two. If they can add a guy like Antonio Brown, as Devontae Adams is sort of a bigger body receiver, I believe he's around 6'2", 6'3". He can do it all, don't get me wrong. He can take you deep, he can take you off the top as well, get behind the safeties. But adding Antonio Brown, if Devontae Adams is your number one receiver and Antonio Brown, despite being 32 years old and being out of the league, being out of the league for over a year now, is matched up against your number 2 corner, just go through the division teams, right? Who's the Bears' number 2 corner? I don't think he can cover Antonio Brown. Same with the Vikings' number 2 corner. He can't cover Antonio Brown. I know the Detroit Lions can't cover Antonio Brown. So just from a pure division standpoint, Antonio Brown is going to be able to absolutely torch, your second corner if you're those other teams in the division. And going forward in the NFC, Antonio Brown is a guy with playoff experience who has performed in big games. We saw that in Pittsburgh, including the highest of high levels like the AFC Championship game, and I believe a Super Bowl appearance as well. So Antonio Brown is more than just what he's being made out to be right now. From a pure football standpoint, the Green Bay Packers could really, really use a guy like Antonio Brown, another dynamic playmaker coming off, outside the numbers. Antonio Brown could also, play a little bit of slot for Green Bay as well, and just give Aaron Rodgers another level. Because right now with the offense, everybody knows Aaron's going to try to find Devontae or, hand the ball off to Aaron Jones, or maybe find Aaron Jones in the flat or, in the middle of the field, something like that as well. Not a great tight end room in Green Bay, not a great wide receiver room in Green Bay. Antonio Brown makes a lot of sense. Will the interest be mutual? I'm sure Antonio would love to play in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, a great quarterback like that, and get back into contention form. He might also be eyeing the Seahawks and some of these other teams I will mention. But I think Green Bay should have just as much interest, if not more, than Seattle and maybe some of these other teams in adding a guy like Antonio Brown. Another team that everyone kind of sort of thought of immediately, but has apparently pulled themselves out of the Antonio Brown race, is the Baltimore Ravens. Now, this is something I don't entirely understand why. So I think, due to Antonio's cousin Hollywood Brown being on the team, he already has a close connection with Lamar Jackson. But after they signed Dez Bryant, today to the practice squad, it's sort of, Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport both kind of tweeted out that they're out of the Antonio Brown sweepstakes. They are not going to sign him, whether it be week 8 or earlier, as soon as today even. They're not going to sign Antonio Brown. And that was something that was really interesting to me personally, due to the connection that he has with Hollywood Brown, due to the connection he already has with Lamar Jackson. To not want to personally go there is something interesting. I believe Antonio Brown wants to go be a Baltimore Raven. I think if he could pick any team in the world, it actually would go to be a Baltimore Raven. I think if Antonio Brown had the pick of all 32 NFL teams, he'd want to go to Baltimore to play with his cousin, his friend Lamar Jackson as well, and stick it to the Steelers and Big Ben. I really do believe if Antonio Brown could pick any team, it'd be Baltimore. But the interest is obviously, have already been reported, is not reciprocated, and I want to know from Baltimore why. You have a good team. You have a phenomenal defense who just added Yannick Ngakoue, by the way. Phenomenal run game with J.K. Dobbins, Mark Ingram, great tight end, and Mark Andrews, great quarterback, Lamar Jackson. The wide receiver position is the weakness, and it's one of the few weaknesses of this Baltimore Ravens team. And I would argue that Baltimore has a worse receiving room than a team in Green Bay that's going to be interested, and then a team in Seattle that is already interested. Seattle has better receivers than Baltimore right now. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are better than Hollywood Brown and whoever else they have. I think Baltimore should, or at least should have been, really, really interested in Antonio Brown. I thought the connection was perfect. I thought the fit was perfect. And obviously they've worked out together before, Lamar Jackson and Antonio Brown, that is. They already have a great run game. I think Antonio Brown in the play-action game that Baltimore likes to run, in that running style, which opens up the play-action, obviously, would have been great. I'm not really sure why there isn't reciprocated interest from Baltimore to Antonio, because I know Antonio Brown 100% wants to be a Baltimore Raven and would love to do it. The final team I'm going to mention to you before I start talking about the Seattle Seahawks which is where I believe Antonio Brown will end up personally. Another dark horse team. They were the dark horse team in the Le'Veon Bell sweepstakes. I expect them to be the dark horse team in these Antonio Brown sweepstakes, and that's the Miami Dolphins. I really do believe that. Quickly, I know a lot of people are going to throw on the New England Patriots. They're done with Antonio Brown. Bill Belichick has already coached him, didn't want to deal with him after all the allegations. I don't think there's going to be a reunion there. Getting back to Miami, here's why Miami is interesting. If you haven't noticed, over the past 2 or 3 weeks, Miami has been really, really aggressive in looking to add some veteran difference makers. They really wanted to go after Le'Veon Bell. In fact, they threw him a multiple-year contract with a lot of money, opted to go play with Kansas City to have a chance to win the Super Bowl. They also tried to sign Snacks Harrison off, I believe, Seattle's practice squad, and he declined. He wants to stay with Seattle. So there's just a lot of moves right now where it looks like Miami is looking more like buyers than sellers. They see an opening in this division. They see that they're 3-3, one game back of Buffalo. They've handed the keys over to rookie quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, who they believe gives them a better chance to win the division, go to the playoffs, secure a wild card spot or division championship than Ryan Fitzpatrick. So if they were looking to add another guy to help out Tua, the offensive line's already playing great for Miami right now. I like Myles Gaskin. He's good, not great, but he's good enough for, I think, this season to look at a guy like Travis Etienne or Najee Harris in the draft. A wide receiver, specifically an explosive one, downfield would be huge for Tua Tagovailoa. Tua loves to throw the ball downfield. He loves to throw the ball to speedy receivers. We saw it with, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. All of these, Tyreek Hill clones have all come through Alabama. And Tua Tagovailoa played with all three of them, and that's where he had the most success, is throwing the ball vertically and downfield. Chan Gailey's offense is already prioritizing, attacking the middle of the field, throwing the ball downfield with precision and accuracy with guys like Devontae Parker and Preston Williams. But both of those guys are 6'2", I think actually maybe even 6'3" or taller, bigger body receivers, jump ball guys, not the type of guys that are absolutely going to burn your corners and safeties and have 5 yards of space in the middle of the field in the end zone all the way 50, 60 yards down the field. They thought they had a guy like that, I think, and Jakeem Grant. He's proven to be more of just a special teams guy and not really a true number 3 slot receiver or take you off the top receiver. They added a guy like Lynn Bowden, who's still developing as well. He's a rookie this year. Antonio Brown would be perfect in Miami. Not to mention Antonio Brown currently lives and trains in Miami. He is from Miami, Florida. Grew up probably a Dolphins fan. It would be really interesting to see Antonio Brown paired up with Tua Tagovailoa. Again, you would have 2 big-bodied receivers, and Devontae Parker who can run every route in the route tree. Preston Williams who can do sort of the same thing as Devontae Parker, a little bit younger, maybe a little bit bigger, and not as good just yet as Devontae. And then you add a guy like Antonio Brown who can operate in the slot, can operate in the flat, can operate downfield, can attack the middle of the field, do anything you ask him to do. And I think that's something you need for a rookie quarterback like Tua Tagovailoa. That's something you need. And either way, even if you're best, maybe Stephon Gilmore when they face New England next time is going to match up on Antonio. Then you offer a guy like Devontae Parker to go against New England's second best receiver and Preston Williams to go against New England's third best receiver. It's just going to open up other opportunities for guys like Devontae Parker and Preston Williams. And then, of course, I think Antonio Brown would be super productive in Miami with Tua Tagovailoa throwing the ball downfield. I think it'd be a great partnership. Keep an eye on the Miami Dolphins as an underdog sort of dark horse team. Not to mention there's a lot of New England people in that building who maybe, they weren't necessarily there when Antonio Brown was in New England, but could have a similar mindset and see maybe why New England signed him last year. Maybe Flores and Belichick have a similar mind when it comes to that. Of course, the final team we're going to talk about in the Antonio Brown sweepstakes is where everybody, including myself, believes he will end up. I think Antonio Brown's going to be a Seattle Seahawk. I think Miami has a chance. If they throw enough money, Antonio could consider it. Same thing with Green Bay. Maybe even a team like New Orleans as well, I could see. I think Kansas City could just, for the giggles and the lulls, maybe throw in a minimum contract as well. I expect him to be a Seattle Seahawk, and here's why. Russell Wilson and him already have a connection. I think Pete Carroll is a very, pro player coach, maybe the most pro player coach in the entire league. Another guy that kind of does that is Mike Tomlin. I think Antonio Brown liked playing under Mike Tomlin. I think he would like playing under Pete Carroll. I already mentioned the connection he's had with Russell Wilson as well. And they already have a system that likes to throw the ball downfield. Antonio likes to be a downfield threat. There's no better deep ball thrower in the entire NFL than Russell Wilson. Yes, he's better than Patrick Mahomes at throwing the deep ball. Gets enough air under it, kind of just drops it in perfectly every single time. So Antonio's going to love, or would love, I should say, playing with Russell Wilson. That's where I expect him to go. Not to mention, it would just open up, again, other opportunities for guys like DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Maybe Antonio gets to be covered by the second, third best corners on those opposing teams. He doesn't even have to go against number 1 corners if he goes to Seattle, because I think DK is considered the number 1 receiver there, and Tyler's considered maybe number 2. So maybe Antonio Brown's wide receiver 3 on Seattle, facing number 3 corners in the NFL, which is just an unfair matchup. And I think Antonio recognizes that if he went to Seattle, that would put them as co-Super Bowl favorites with Kansas City. If the Seattle Seahawks do indeed sign Antonio Brown, and he's even 70% of the player he was in Pittsburgh, I almost guarantee you the Seattle Seahawks will be playing in the Super Bowl next year. That's just how I see it. That's how I believe it. And I think this offense, is already number 1 in the NFL right now in points and deep balls and yards per attempt. I think Seattle's number 1 in all those categories. Adding Antonio Brown is just overkill. And it's really just unfair to give a quarterback like Russell Wilson a talented deep ball receiver like that in Antonio Brown. Let me know where you guys think Antonio Brown's going to go. Again, I think he's going to be a Seattle Seahawk with teams like the Dolphins and Packers showing a lot of interest. Let me know where you think Antonio Brown is going to go. That's going to do it for this segment. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side of this break, I want to get into all of those Ryan Fitzpatrick quotes, how he was heartbroken that he was benched by the Miami Dolphins in favor of Tua Tagovailoa. I'll tell you why I still agree with the decision of Brian Flores to start Tua, not this week, but the week after against the LA Rams after the Miami Dolphins bye week this week. I'll also tell you what I am expecting in Tua Tagovailoa's debut against the LA Rams about, I think, 10 days from today. And I'll tell you if Tua Tagovailoa gives the Miami Dolphins a good chance at making the playoffs. Can he lead them to the playoffs his first rookie year? We'll get into all that good stuff right after this short break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We really do appreciate it if you are a returning listener. I just finished talking about everything Antonio Brown, just pretty much, any team that could potentially be interested in him. I think there's going to be a lot of teams interested, the way I see it at least. I think there's going to be more than people think as well. It's not just going to be those three teams that I mentioned or the couple teams I mentioned. There's going to be a couple surprise teams, a couple teams looking to make the playoffs, a couple teams that maybe already have some good receivers but are looking to add some more. Just a couple teams in general who maybe just want to put themselves back on the map, things like that. Teams that are just maybe struggling. Maybe they're 2-4, trying to flip the script, and get into the playoffs. I could see it. Maybe a team like the Houston Texans comes to mind. A team like the Tennessee Titans, who's already 5-0, they could keep going. Things like that. So there's going to be more teams than interested. I do expect him, however, to be a Seattle Seahawk when it's all said and done. I think Antonio Brown, there's been interest for just too long. It makes too much sense on both sides. So I really do believe we're going to see Antonio Brown as a Seattle Seahawk. That's just what I believe. Let me know what you all think. Where do you think, at least, Antonio Brown is going to end up this season? All right, I want to get into now everything Tua Tagovailoa. Again, that was the main story in my last episode, but that conversation has been continuing through a couple of days. The Dolphins officially announced yesterday that Tua Tagovailoa would be taking over as the starting quarterback for at least the rest of the season. Ryan Fitzpatrick had a lot of interesting quotes. I'm paraphrasing here, but one of them was talking about how he was heartbroken, how he really thought that this was his team, and that there wasn't a team that showed as much commitment to him as Miami since his Buffalo days. So it was really, there was sort of this ongoing sort of conversation of, was this the right time to start Tua Tagovailoa? Again, Ryan Fitzpatrick had come off back-to-back blowout victories, one against the defending NFC champions San Francisco in their building, then the New York Jets at home. They had won 3 out of their last 4, 3-3 on the season, 1 game back from the division, 1 game ahead of the New England Patriots in the division, and he gets yanked to start over Tua Tagovailoa. Now, I understand where Ryan Fitzpatrick is coming from. I do. He's playing some of his best football of his career. He's had back-to-back really, really good games. And, of course, he's put his team in a position to win, and make the playoffs, something he hasn't really been in that situation since maybe that one Jet year he made the playoffs, or his Buffalo days where he was the starting quarterback, they were committed to him, and he was potentially leading to the playoffs. And if you're Ryan Fitzpatrick, you felt confident that you could lead that team to the playoffs. But at the end of the day, Ryan Fitzpatrick knew exactly what his job was. Mentor Tua Tagovailoa, be the stopgap, and see where it takes you, right? There had to be a plan going into, when I refuse to believe that the Miami Dolphins went into the season without a couple of dates, at least in the season minimum, where they had thought, hey, Tua might be able to come in here. That game against Cincinnati, the game against Jacksonville, this game against the Rams coming off a bye week, right? There were a couple of dates that had to be, at least in Ryan Fitzpatrick's head, where he could think that, hey, maybe they're going to turn over the keys here. And yes, while Ryan Fitzpatrick, was playing good and winning games, I think this was still the right decision. Now, I don't want to slight Ryan Fitzpatrick. He played phenomenal for Miami. Again, they're 3-3, one game back, one game ahead of New England, one game back of Buffalo, going into the bye week, winning 3 out of their last 4, and that one loss was, I believe, an 8-point loss to the Seattle Seahawks, who are currently undefeated. So again, you can make the argument that this move shouldn't have happened, and I get everybody's points, but I still believe this is the right moment, and I don't know if there's better timing. I cannot remember a time when there was a mid-season change from veteran to rookie quarterback like there is, once or twice a year in the NFL. There's at least one stopgap guy, and then they finally turn it over to the number 1 overall pick, or the number 5 overall pick, or the top 10 pick, or the 4th round draft pick, Dak Prescott, right? Eventually, the veteran gives it over to the rookie all the time. There's 2 or 3 times a year where this transition happens. We saw it with Burrow taking over week 1, Herbert coming in already, and now Tua, right? So we see this. Can any of you think of a time where the rookie quarterback, who was drafted in the top 15 or 10, right, was handed the job either due to injury or due to poor play, right, or for any reason, where the team was playing well, everything was going good, right? Usually the rookie quarterback gets handed the keys to the kingdom when everything's going bad, and he needs to be the savior. He needs to save the team. Joe Burrow, you need to save Cincinnati. Kyler Murray, we just got rid of Josh Rosen. You need to save Arizona. Justin Herbert, Tyrod Taylor's hurt. You need to save the LA Chargers season. Baker Mayfield, Tyrod Taylor gets hurt. Save the Cleveland Browns franchise. How many times has that happened to guys, and how many times has it not worked out, right? There's one situation where a guy had time to prep, watched a winning team, and joined that team, right? Like started being the starting quarterback for that team when everybody was clicking, everybody's playing confidence. That one instance came with Patrick Mahomes, and it wasn't even a midseason change. So I cannot think of a time where there was a midseason change at quarterback where things were going well with the veteran, you're potentially on pace to make the playoffs, and you switch to the rookie. That's why everybody's sort of confused about this move, and that's why I absolutely love Brian Flores for making this decision. Why hand your team to the rookie, the 21, 22-year-old rookie? This kid who's never taken NFL meaningful snaps unless you count those 2 against it. Why would you hand him that team when everything's going wrong? When the receivers aren't running the right routes? When the offensive line's a mess? When the run game can't get going? When you've lost 4 straight? When you're 0-5? Why do you want to give somebody who's new to this job, seriously new to this job, being an NFL quarterback, in that sort of turmoil and chaos? Why not give it to the guy when you've won 3 out of your last 4? When your wide receivers are playing with confidence, when your offensive line has looked like its best in years, when the running game is finally running effectively and you've won 3 out of your last 4 and you're in the thick of the playoff race. When everything's going right, you should be giving it to your rookie quarterback. So it's not all on him. Tua Tagovailoa next game doesn't need to save the Miami Dolphins because Devontae Parker's playing well. Because the defense just shut out the New York Jets and completely destroyed the San Francisco 49ers. The defense is playing with all-time confidence. The offensive line has given up the least amount of sacks in the NFL according to PFF. Why not give the ball to Tua Tagovailoa then? Not to mention he's coming off a bye week and the LA Rams have to come from the West Coast to the East Coast. The LA Rams are already a streaky team. They're coming from the West Coast on the East Coast after a short week, after an absolutely bloodbath game that will go back and forth between them and the Bears. There is no better time to start Tua Tagovailoa than right now. And that is why Brian Flores made the move, because Brian Flores is one of the most up-and-coming coaches in this league. We know this. We all love Brian Flores. Brian Flores gets praised in the national media for turning around the Dolphins so quickly, for being maybe the one Belichick disciple that looks like he might actually pan out as an NFL coach. This was the right decision. This was the right move. Tua Tagovailoa, off a bye week against a streaky Rams team coming off a short week going West Coast to East Coast, home debut, Devontae Parker's playing out of his mind, and he's playing with all the confidence in the world. Preston Williams coming off back-to-back touchdown games, playing with all the confidence in the world. Mike Gesicki, who's currently having a breakout season, playing with all the confidence in the world. Myles Gaskin, who has won that starting running back job for the Miami Dolphins and running his heart out, being effective, finally getting his first ever 100 yards, total 100 yard scrimmage game against the New York Jets. He's playing the best football of his life, and this offensive line for the Miami Dolphins have given up the least amount of sacks in the NFL with 3 rookies starting. Robert Hunt, Solomon Kinley, and Austin Jackson are all starting on the offensive line, and they've given up the least amount of sacks in the NFL. Everything is going right for the Miami Dolphins right now, so what do? You get better. And Tua Tagovailoa is better than Ryan Fitzpatrick. He was drafted to do this. We have seen the best of Ryan Fitzpatrick. This is the best Ryan Fitzpatrick can take you. A 500 record with some great moments and some bad moments, and you're in the hunt. The Miami Dolphins are sick and tired of being in the hunt. Owner Stephen Ross is sick and tired of being in the hunt. Brian Flores did not take this job so he could be in the hunt like the Miami Dolphins have been the past 20 years. Chris Greer, who worked his ass off and finally got nominated to be the general manager of the Miami Dolphins after working with them for the past 20 years, has seen the Dolphins be in the hunt, and he is tired of just being in the hunt. They want to make the playoffs. They want to win the division. They want to run this division the next 20 years. The player development, A+. Everybody's playing with confidence. The defense coming off a shutout against the New York Jets. A bye week. Rams coming West Coast to East Coast off a short week. All of these factors scream everything is falling in place for the Miami Dolphins. So why not put in the guy that you believe over the next 5 to 10 seasons is going to win you multiple Super Bowls? Tua Tagovailoa. I saw a great article by The Ringer that was talking about everything I'm talking about with this Fitzpatrick versus Tua situation. Was this the right move? Was this not the right move? And the title of the article is really what stuck with me and why I think this is the perfect statement for this. The Miami Dolphins are not choosing to miss the playoffs or are choosing to, the Miami Dolphins are not choosing to miss the playoffs without playing Ryan Fitzpatrick. They are choosing to make the playoffs with Tua Tagovailoa at the helm. The Miami Dolphins, Brian Flores, Chris Greer, Stephen Ross, that team, the defense, the receivers, the running back, the offensive line, all of them believe Tua Tagovailoa is the best quarterback on that roster. At least the coach and GM believe it, which is why they're putting him in now, when there's an opportunity to strike. When the Dolphins' next 6 games are easier than the Patriots' next 6 games and easier than Buffalo's next 6 games. The Brian Flores, Chris Greer, they see an opportunity to not just have a really good year developmental-wise, to get the young guys playing well, to take another step forward in this rebuild. The Miami Dolphins are done rebuilding. They see an opportunity to win the wild card spot as there's a new playoff team this year. There's an extra playoff team. They see an opportunity to win this division and beat out Buffalo and New England. They see an opportunity to have a home playoff game this winter. That's what the Miami Dolphins want. They think Tua Tagovailoa can deliver that to them. And isn't that what every Dolphin fan thinks? Isn't that what every NFL fan thought when they drafted Tua Tagovailoa? That he was the guy going forward? That he's the one who's going to lead them to the playoffs? That he's going to win them to the Super Bowl? Nobody thought Ryan Fitzpatrick was going to do that because he can't. He doesn't do that. Ryan Fitzpatrick gets you 6-10, 7-9, 8-8, 3-3. And that's where he gets you, and that's it. Tua Tagovailoa, on the other hand, for the Miami Dolphins, can get you 10-6, 11-5. Playoff appearances, Super Bowls down the line, MVPs down the line. That's the type of player they believe they have down in Miami. That's why this is the perfect opportunity. Give this man 2 weeks to prepare for the LA Rams defense. Yes, Aaron Donald's there. Yes, Jalen Ramsey's there. It's going to be a tough first game. Let him take over now. I love this decision from Brian Flores. It's the first I think I've ever seen a midseason change when everything's going right. Usually, again, this quarterback is handed the tools when everything's going poorly, when everything's going wrong. But now, finally, a rookie quarterback gets to come in when everything's going right. The last time that happened was Patrick Mahomes. Everything was great. The receivers were playing well. The running back was great. The running back was coming off his best career game. The offensive line is giving up the least amount of sacks. The defense is coming off a shutout. No better time to start Tua Tagovailoa than right now. For the next few minutes now, I want to compare Tua Tagovailoa's potential debut to what Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert did in their first ever NFL games. All right, so I believe Thursday, I think, yes, that should be the first ever Joe Burrow game, I believe, was against the Cleveland Browns. They obviously lost. It was Joe Burrow threw the ball. Oh, no, that was his second career start, I believe. Let's start off with Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert, in his first career game against, I think it was Kansas City, had a good game, not a great game. Justin Herbert on the season so far has 1,195 yards, 9 touchdowns, 3 picks, QBR of 72. Let's look at Justin Herbert's considered best game. His best game so far, I believe you could say, is against Carolina, where he threw for 330 yards, a touchdown, a pick. Or you could say against the New Orleans Saints. Let's go to the New Orleans Saints game. 20 of 34, 264 yards, 58% completion percentage, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Is that what Tua was going to do in his debut? Probably not. But something similar to Justin Herbert's first game, where he had a touchdown and a pick, a lot of yards. Joe Burrow against Cleveland, if you remember that game, I think that was what everybody considers, his better game, at least. His first ever game, if you want to go through comparison like that, was against the LA Chargers, obviously. He went 23 of 36, 193 yards, and no touchdowns and a pick. So that was Joe Burrow's debut game. Now let's go quickly and see Justin Herbert's debut game, where he had, I believe it was against Kansas City, like I just said, he had 22 of 33, 311 yards, a touchdown and a pick. So when Joe Burrow on his rookie debut has 193 yards, no touchdowns and a pick. Justin Herbert in his debut had 311 yards, a touchdown and a pick. What can we expect from Tua Tagovailoa in his debut? Because there are a lot of people, including myself, who had Tua Tagovailoa as the number 1 quarterback prospect over Joe Burrow. I believe Tua Tagovailoa is going to find somewhere in the middle. I don't know if he's going to throw for 311 yards like Justin Herbert did. I expect Tua Tagovailoa, though, to be the first quarterback out of all of these rookie quarterbacks to throw multiple touchdowns in his debut. That's what I think Tua Tagovailoa will do. I think Tua will throw for probably between 220 and 270 yards. I don't think he'll get to 300. The Dolphins' offense has a lot of running packages in it to begin with. They love Myles Gaskin. They love the offensive line. I think he will throw at least 2 touchdowns. That's what I'm expecting for Tua Tagovailoa's debut. I'm really excited to see it. Again, this is the perfect moment for Tua Tagovailoa to start. It is the perfect time. I'm so excited to watch that game versus the Rams 10 days from today when you're listening to this. Let me know, would you have started Tua Tagovailoa now, or would you have waited for Ryan Fitzpatrick to become Ryan Fitztragic and start him then? Do you like the decision to start him when they're 3-3? Do you trust him to lead them to a playoff race? What do you guys think about the whole Tua Tagovailoa situation? All right, we're going to take another short break. On the other side of this short break, we're going to be giving you my top 10 NFL teams heading in to Week 7. We'll get into all that good stuff and that top 10 list of NFL teams going into Week 7 right after this short break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to Extreme Cage Fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And I am your host, Alex Masfer. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the GSMC Sports Podcast. If you are a returning listener, we really do appreciate it. I just finished talking about everything Tua Tagovailoa, the situation between him and Ryan Fitzpatrick, the Dolphins officially going with him as the starter. Again, I think it is the perfect time to do it. I don't think I've ever seen a midseason change where the rookie's actually getting to start in a good situation situation where the team has been winning games and the defense has been playing well. Again, I don't see a better opportunity for Tua Tagovailoa to start than this game. And I really do believe that if Tua Tagovailoa turns out to be the player he's supposed to be, the Dolphins could win the division this season. I really do believe that if he has a rookie year like Andrew Luck had, that Deshaun Watson had, the Dolphins are a real threat to win the AFC East over both Buffalo and New England. And it's all going to start potentially 10 days from today when Tua makes his debut against the LA Rams. Not this week, but the week after that. All right, I want to switch gears now to my top 10 NFL teams. I haven't done this since I believe after week 4, so about 2 weeks later, I'm giving you my top 10 NFL teams. We're 6 weeks through the year. Everybody's played about 6 games now, and going forward, everyone's got about 10 games left. I want to give you my top 10 NFL teams. 2 teams that are in there that are playing, I guess you could consider well, but are not in there. New Orleans and Buffalo are not top 10 teams in my opinion. Both of them, I believe, are 4-2. I think actually New Orleans might be 3-2. Drew Brees looks shot. That team is not playing well. That defense is not great. This is a spoiler alert, but I think they might actually lose this Sunday to Carolina. And Buffalo has dropped 2 straight. They beat up on some bad teams the first 4 weeks of the year, haven't been able to beat the good teams. Don't get me wrong. They played Tennessee and Kansas City, 2 top 10 teams, which I will both talk about in this segment. But at the end of the day, Josh Allen is getting exposed as the quarterback he is, which is a guy that isn't going to beat above average NFL defenses and above average NFL teams. So I don't have either of those 2 teams on this list for my top 10 teams. With all that being said, let's get into that list. These, in my opinion, are the top 10 teams in the National Football League through week 6. So we have week 7 coming up this year. So through 6 weeks of the season, these are my top 10 NFL teams. Coming in at number 10 is the team that just beat the Buffalo Bills, the Dallas Cowboys, the Arizona Cardinals. Coming in at 4-2. I believe the Cardinals are finally starting to click here a little bit. They had a little bit of a slow start, I think, integrating the new weapons and DeAndre Hopkins, trying to get Kenyon Drake back on track. That offensive line isn't great. That defense isn't great. This is a streaky team, specifically when it comes to their offense. That's what the air raid system will kind of do to you. That Mike Leach system that we're seeing in Mississippi State's a little bit inconsistent. Cliff Kingsbury's air raid offense with Kyler Murray seems to be a little bit inconsistent. But when they're clicking, they are firing on all cylinders, and they usually put up 30-plus points when everything's going right, as we saw against the Dallas Cowboys, where they put up, 38 points on them? So I think the Cardinals are still a top 10 team in the league. I think they're one of the most dynamic offenses in the league, and I think they're finally starting to click here a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cardinals sort of rattle off a couple wins in a row here. Maybe not this weekend against Seattle, but after this weekend, sort of, maybe win 2-3 straight games here. And the Cardinals coming in at number 10, going 4-2. Number 9 is their actual division partner in the LA Rams. They're a really good team. Again, just like the Cardinals, they're a little bit of a streaky team. They're coming in at 4-2. I think Sean McVay is still a top 10, maybe even top 5 coach in the NFL. Jared Goff's sort of having a little bit of a resurgence season here. There are a couple games and a couple decisions where it looks like Jared Goff from last year, but there's plenty of moments where it looks like Jared Goff of 2 years ago, where they made the Super Bowl against New England, if you all remember that game. Rams coming in at number 9, coming in at 4-2. I think they're a good team. I don't know if they're a great team, but man, this division, the NFC West, is absolutely incredible. The Seahawks, who I will obviously get to, are at 5-0. Rams 4-2. Cardinals 4-2. San Francisco, who's a pretty good team, is 3-3. So, I mean, there's a lot of good teams in that division. I mean, they're the opposite of the NFC East. They are the best team in the division by far. One of the best football divisions of all time, if I'm perfectly being honest. Rams coming in at number 9 at 4-2. I believe they're second place in that division right now. I have them a little bit above above the Cardinals. I think they're a little bit more consistent than the Cardinals are. The Cardinals, if both teams are on their best day, I think the Cardinals would beat the Rams. But I think the Rams have a better chance of, being on their best day than the Cardinals do as of right now. That's a close one, but I have the Rams over the Cardinals. Rams coming in at number 9 with a 4-2 record. Number 8, the Chicago Bears. They are 5-1 atop of this division. I'd like to see them beat maybe a couple better teams. I'd like to see them blow out some bad teams. Haven't been able to do that just yet. Their first test will be this Monday night against the Rams. That's the game of the week for me, man. 5-1 Chicago Bears, 4-2 LA Rams. I think it'll be a fantastic game. That's the biggest test of Nick Foles and the Chicago Bears so far. Can they take it to the LA Rams and beat a really good LA Rams team in Los Angeles? And then after that, we can start having conversations on if they're real contenders to win this division with a team like Green Bay. Coming in at number 8, Chicago, 5-1. They just keep figuring out ways to, win games. So that's why I like them. I love Nick Foles. They're coming in at 5-1. Number 8, Chicago Bears. Number 7 is their division rival, the Green Bay Packers. They're not winning this division right now, but they are 4-1, coming off a tough loss to Tampa Bay. I'm not too worried about Aaron Rodgers. I think he's still in the MVP conversation. Had one of the worst games of his career against Tampa Bay. But that doesn't mean that the sky is falling. That doesn't mean, the season's over for them or anything like that. This team is still a really good team. Aaron Rodgers is still a really, really good quarterback. I expect Green Bay to continue to be really, really good. They can't win them all. They're not going to go 16-0. 4-1 Green Bay Packers coming in at number 7 for me. I still expect them to win this division. Again, I like Chicago. Again, I just talked about them. They came in at number 8 on this list. I still expect Green Bay to win, kind of win this division. I think they'll win it by multiple games as well. Green Bay Packers coming in at number 7 on my top 10 NFL teams list. Coming in at number 6 is the first undefeated team of the day, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I got to admit, the Steelers are way better than I thought. I knew their defense would be really good. My question was Big Ben. Big Ben seems to be just like the player he was pre, elbow or shoulder, surgery, whatever he had. And what better organization, seriously, is better at drafting wide receivers than the Pittsburgh Steelers? It's a revolving door. Antonio Brown comes in and out. Mike Wallace comes in and out. All these guys just Heath Miller in and out, right? Hines Ward in and out. And then all they do is somehow draft another really good receiver, right? They lost Antonio Brown, and last year it was just Juju, and everyone was like, oh, this wide receiver core is not good enough. Now Deontay Johnson looks like a stud. Chase Claypool out of Notre Dame looks like an absolute stud. I don't think it's a better organization drafting specific positional groups. I'm trying to think, are there any other teams that consistently have a really good positional group? I'm trying to think. I think the way New England drafts quarterbacks is probably up there. Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett are both starting caliber quarterbacks. Obviously, Jimmy G just went to a Super Bowl, not to mention Brady and whoever they eventually draft. So I'd probably put New England's quarterback drafting up there. Like I just mentioned, Pittsburgh's wide receiver drafting is absolutely ridiculous. And those two are really ridiculous, but specifically San Francisco, specifically Pittsburgh, the way they draft wide receivers, they look like absolute studs. They come in at number 6. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 5-0. Coming in at number 5 is their division rivals. We're kind of coming up on a pattern a little bit here. The Baltimore Ravens. They're 5-1. I cannot wait. I believe it's the same week, actually. I think it's not this week, but the week after. I believe week 8, we're finally getting our first matchup between Ravens and Steelers. There's some rumors it could be flexed to Sunday night. I'd absolutely love that. That's going to be a phenomenal game, man. I think this is the best both Baltimore and Pittsburgh have been in a long time. Usually, when they're both really good, one team is kind of clearly better than the other. I don't see that this year. I'm not saying Baltimore is clearly better than Pittsburgh. I'm not saying that Pittsburgh is clearly better than Baltimore. I think they're honestly tied. I think Baltimore's a little bit worse than they were last year. Maybe the addition of Yannick Ngakoue will change that. Plus, maybe if Des Bryant can get past his physical and work his way up the depth chart as well. But Pittsburgh, man, that defense is legit. They're going to do everything they can to stop Lamar Jackson. And if Pittsburgh can get a lead on Baltimore, they could run away with it. I really like this Pittsburgh and Baltimore sort of rivalry this year. I think it's the best it's been in years. Right now, it's slight, but I'm going to put the Ravens ahead of the Steelers just because I haven't seen the Steelers do it to like that team, that really, really good team. It's this weekend. They're playing the Titans. If they beat the Titans, they will come up this list 100%, but I'm not too confident they can do that just yet. So Steelers at 6, Ravens at 5. Coming in at number 4, we're getting the top 4 teams now of the NFL so far, in my opinion. Top 4. Number 4, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, coming off a huge win, 38-10 win over the Green Bay Packers. I think I mentioned this in my last episode. On their best day, I think Tampa Bay might be the best team in the entire league. Todd Bowles has coached up this defense to a potentially number 1 defense in the league. I think they're number 1 right now. I bet they'll finish the season around top 5-ish is my guess. This offense, when it's clicking, when Mike Evans gets going, with Chris Godwin gets back and healthy, Rob Gronkowski starting to look like the guy they signed, more than just a blocker now, caught a touchdown, had 70-plus receiving yards. When this team is fully clicking both on offense and defense and everybody's healthy for Tampa Bay, I'm not sure there's anybody that is better. Tampa Bay coming in at number 4 with a record of 4-2. Coming in at number 3, our next undefeated team on the list, Tennessee Titans, man. We got to start giving credit to Mike Vrabel. He's a top 3 coach in football. He is, just right now. He's up there with Belichick and Andy Reid. He just is. This team is undefeated. They have recaptured the magic of last season with Ryan Tannehill and taken it to another step. They're absolutely unbeatable right now when it comes to the run game. Nobody can stop their offensive line in Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill has seemed to taken a step up than he was last year. He's playing better this year than he was last year. A.J. Brown looks really good this year as well. That defense, after adding Clowney, has taken another step. This Tennessee Titans team is legit. They can win a Super Bowl. I fully believe that Tennessee Titans, I understand Ryan Tannehill is their quarterback, and he's not considered this worldly talent that maybe Lamar and Russell and Patrick Mahomes is. But we got to keep it real. This Ryan Tannehill is not the Ryan Tannehill we saw in Miami. This is a completely different Ryan Tannehill. He's an elite level quarterback right now, and he's an MVP candidate. He's 100% an MVP candidate, and I think he could win it. I think it's going to come down to him and Russell Wilson. The Tennessee Titans are legit this year. I expect them to be in the AFC Championship game, if not further, when it comes to playoff time. That team is insane. They know what their identity is. They know no team knows their identity more and perfects it better right now than Tennessee. That used to be New England for years and years and years. New England knew what team they were, and they would perfect it. Not so much this year. Tennessee knows the type of team they are. They're that bruiser team. They're that hard-mouthed physical team, and no team has perfected their style more than Tennessee has this year. 100% the Tennessee Titans coming in at number 3 for me, 5-0, undefeated record. Coming in at number 2 is the Seattle Seahawks. They're also undefeated, had a bye week last week. I love everything Seattle's doing. Again, I talked about them a lot in the Antonio Brown segment, so I'll keep them short. Top 2 team in football. I think if they add Antonio Brown, they should be Super Bowl favorites with Kansas City, who's obviously coming in at number 1. I understand they're not undefeated. They had that tough loss to the Las Vegas Raiders 2 weeks ago. Still, Kansas City Chiefs are still the best team in the league, best quarterback, best offensive coach in the league combination. I expect them to be back in the Super Bowl. They also just added Le'Veon Bell, who has not even made his debut yet. So coming in at number 1 is the Kansas City Chiefs for me. So to run through the list again, number 1, Kansas City, number 2, Seattle, number 3, Tennessee, number 4, Tampa Bay, number 5, Baltimore, number 6, Pittsburgh, number 7, Green Bay, number 8, Chicago, number 9, Los Angeles, the Rams that is, and number 10, the Arizona Cardinals. Those are my top 10 teams in the NFL this season through 6 weeks. Let me know what you think about my list. Who would you have on? Who would you have off? Let me know on social media or in the comments. All right, that's going to do it for this segment. On the other side of this segment, for as long as I can, I'll be going through as many NBA rumors that we have going on right now. I feel like it's going to be a daily or at least weekly segment. Every single week, we're going to be just going through all the NBA rumors. Once the offseason doesn't really get going, and where there's already rumors about where's Giannis going to go, could Kawhi leave in 2021? The Pelicans have a new coach. Is James Harden getting traded? The NBA is just a gift that keeps on giving. We'll get into all that good stuff right after this short break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. If you are a returning listener, we really, really do appreciate it here at the GSMC Sports Podcast. For today's final segment, I want to talk about one piece of NBA news, one piece of NBA rumors. Again, the NBA offseason is the gift that just keeps on giving, and the big part of the offseason hasn't even happened yet, which is, of course, free agency and the draft. The first one is in the actual official piece of news. The New Orleans Pelicans have finally found their head coach. They seem to be one of the few people still looking for one. I believe Houston's also still looking for their head coach, and I think that would kind of wrap up the NBA coaching carousel. They opt for Stan Van Gundy, the announcer for ESPN, who also coached teams, I believe, like the Magic, the Heat, and the Pistons are the 3 teams he coached. Stan Van Gundy around the league is known as a really great teacher, a really great guy. Overall, he's been sort of known as this player development type coach. a guy who was pretty big, and I don't know how big he was in Dwayne Wade's development back in, I think it was 2003 and 2004 is when I believe he coached. He did not coach that Miami Heat championship team, but he did help Wade get to the player he was. So he's been a big player development guy. I think he was pretty big on player development for Orlando on top of Detroit. I'm excited to see Stan. I think he is a really good dude. I think he's a really good coach. Is he the type of coach that's going to win you a championship? I'm not sure. But out of all the options available, I do not hate the Stan Van Gundy head coaching hire. I think he'll be good for Zion Williamson. I think he's a really good player development coach. I think he's really good with coaching young players as well. And there's some old tweets that were dug up about, Kyle, or about Stan Van Gundy. Pretty much him, his tweets about how good the Pelicans' bright future is with all these young players. So I think Stan actually really likes this current roster of New Orleans. So it wouldn't surprise me if they kind of just run it back with the same roster, that being, re-signing Brandon Ingram, not trading Lonzo, and trying to see where the New Orleans Pelicans come from a standpoint of next season. But I like the Stan Van Gundy hire. Out of all the options left, my number one choice for New Orleans would have been Billy Donovan. I think he's the best player development coach in the NBA, or at least one of them. Would have loved to see him as the Pelicans head coach. He obviously opted for Chicago. I think Stan Van Gundy is a pretty good option, however, as well as the next head coach of the New Orleans Pelicans. The final thing I would like to talk about is a rumor coming out of The Athletic that agents believe that Kawhi Leonard is currently on pace to leave, that's his right, leave the Los Angeles Clippers in 2021. Is that going to happen? I severely doubt it. But there's one area where it does make sense if the Clippers underperform against next season. They got rid of Doc Rivers, who apparently Kawhi Leonard loved playing for and wanted to go to Los Angeles to play for Doc Rivers, replaced him with Ty Lue. If the Los Angeles Clippers do not get to at least a conference finals next year, then there's some serious discussions on if Kawhi Leonard could leave in 2021. And the only team that came to mind with me in 2021 is obviously the Knicks are going to go hard, the Lakers are going to go hard. I say it every time a free agent's available, but the Miami Heat. All right, Jimmy Butler and Kawhi Leonard have a close friendship. They're already, almost played with each other. If you remember, the number one guy that Kawhi Leonard wanted to play with in Los Angeles was not Paul George. It was Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's obviously been to a finals. Could be back to a finals as soon as next season. Maybe even win a championship next season with the Miami Heat. Maybe if they don't get there next year, Kawhi Leonard's the missing piece. That would put them immediately as the top team in the NBA, in my opinion. Do I think it's going to happen? Absolutely not. But we got to address the rumors circulating around the NBA. Again, if the Clippers maybe disappoint everybody again next season, maybe he doesn't like playing with Ty Lue, and then all of a sudden you could really consider the Clippers going into a little bit of a rebuild mode or something like that as a failed experiment, and maybe the Kawhi Leonard does go to a new team. Who knows? All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. Again, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast. Now, again, I have been your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Before I let you go, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as leave us a 5-star review or just a positive review in general. That would be greatly appreciated. Again, I have been your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. Again, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network, and I will see you all in the next one.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.